Hey guys, and welcome to the Because Maybe podcast, the podcast that takes a look at all things 90s and answers some of the most important questions of the decade. Because maybe conspiracies are dumb. I'm your host, John Connolly. Thank you for whoever you are, wherever you are, for taking the time out of your day to listen to this podcast. We have a good show for you this week, too. We look at one of the most iconic TV performances in MTV music history, and we review Enema of the State, one of the more subtly introspective albums of the 90s. If you don't believe me, keep on listening. Guys, if you are on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr, check out Because Maybe Pod. We have some extra content going on in there, just kind of news and so on and so forth. The usual thing you find on the social media pages. I know the last couple of weeks we've been a little bit lagging. Just stuff's been super busy. With my, my 8 to 5. That's just been, it's the Christmas period. I work in marketing, and the Christmas period is perhaps our busiest time of year. Well, there's no perhaps about it. It is our busiest time of year. That's why we've kind of got behind with the with the social media pages. But you know what? We are looking to push forward for the rest of the year. Same thing goes with the blog, because maybe podcast.wordpress.com. That's where you'll find kind of teasers, and for those guys who don't want to listen to the podcast but want to read some stuff, we go on there. And of course we have our YouTube channel, which has some extra content, bonus material, podcast samples, so you can listen to us on the go, and so on and so forth. We are on iTunes, we are on Podbean. If you guys are on those services, go ahead and sign up and subscribe to us. We are looking to increase the number of subscribers, and just so it automatically downloads to your preferred podcast app, as opposed to me having to go, hey look, we did a podcast, hey look, we did a podcast. I want to do less of that and more content, if that makes sense. This is nearly the end of our first season, though. I said at the very first episode that I wanted to do this more as a seasonal thing, maybe do between 12 and 15 episodes, then take a couple of weeks off to kind of restock the shelves in terms of research and in terms of ideas and so on and so forth. I've already planned season 2 as best that I can. However, we are looking to improve, and we are looking to new ideas. I mean, I know the format right now is I give a little speech at the beginning, we go into our segment, we have a little skit, and then we go out. If there's a way to change all that, let us know. We'll go ahead and take care of it. I might start doing 90s trivia at the beginning of the episode. I know I haven't done that in a while, but I'm just finding a hard time to spend the time researching that at the moment. Again, Christmas time, the holiday time, is so busy for me, and the fact that I'm able to get this podcast out is a miracle in itself. So, we did have some good feedback last week. We did have an upturn in listens. That was very important. I know we were down for a couple of weeks, and that kind of got to me a little bit. Because I was looking to, figure out, well, if I'm not getting the people listening to it that I want to get listening to it, what do I do? How do I do it? And people who know me know that I have a hard time pushing things forward, but I'm glad we've got an upturn. I think I've got an idea now on how to structure seasons, episodes, and so on and so forth a little bit better, and I'm hoping that next season will be far better than what we had this season. But again, I'm proud of the season. I'm proud of everything that we've done. We've launched a campaign for a charity. We've exposed some of my own personal demons. We've looked at some really important things that happened during my childhood, my young adulthood, whatever you want to call it, and so on and so forth. And I'm really happy with everything that we've done. But now next season, we're going to jump to the next level, and just push that further, push the envelope a little bit further, not be controversial, but more and more in depth in what we're looking at. So that's one of the things that I'm looking for. I also had a little bit of feedback on the topic that I spoke about at the end of last week's episode. It was a very hard thing to listen to, I'm not going to lie. It was a very hard thing to say, but I stand by every single word that I said. If you have a problem with that, if anybody has a problem with that, please email me, because maybe podcast@gmail.com, and I will quite rightly listen to what you say, because that's how you debate in society these days. That's one of the things we haven't done in a long time. We don't listen to the opposite side of the argument, no matter how outlandish, no matter how stupid, and no matter how we think that the other side of the argument is wrong. We don't listen to that side of the argument, so that we don't educate people. We just immediately write people off as loonies, bigots, racists, sexists, snowflakes, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's wrong. I think every point of view needs to be listened to, and if a point of view is very outlandish and very wrong, then that person needs to be educated, not ostracized. So that's just my opinion. I don't care what you think. That's basically how it is. So with all that in mind, we're going to go ahead and start looking at Blink-182 Enema of the State. And yeah, it was a really good time recording this. I had a lot of fun. And, I want you to keep an open mind when you listen to this, because I know a lot of people consider this kind of music childish and stuff like that, but I want you to listen to it and understand why I think the way that it is. And I think I make some good points. I think Greg makes some good points, and it's not as cut and dry as it seems on the surface. It's one of these things that's very, very shallow on the surface, but when you dig into it, it actually is a lot deeper. So, with that in mind, Blink-182, Enema of the State.
Review Corner, the Music Lounge.
Okay, this week on Review Corner, we take a look at one of the most popular albums of the tail end of the 90s. This is like squeezes in with the last couple of months. It was a worldwide smash. It appeared in many movies. We are talking about Blink-182's Enema of the State, and I am joined once again by musical connoisseur and the best person I can possibly think of to talk with me about this, Mr. Gregg Gregory. Greg, how are you, man?
Hey, what's up? Good to be here.
Well, the last couple of times we spoke, we've moved into, we spoke about movies, we spoke about Wayne's World, and we spoke about Groundhog Day, but today we're going more into what both of us find one of our more passions in life. We're going to music. And both of us being musicians, you highly professional, me somewhat amateur, we find love in music, and this is one of the albums that when I first approached the podcast, I said this was probably the most 90s album out there.
Yeah, it's up there. Also, this is... we do several songs of this album on the holodeck as well. So
sweet. This album, I don't know where to begin with this one. I mean, we can go look at the technical info all we want to, but this album was more emotional, and I don't mean like highs and lows and crying, but more along the lines of it wasn't a technical album, so to speak. It was simply, three chords. It was described as nursery rhymes on steroids.
Yeah, it had a certain pop sensibility to it, even though remaining true to its punk roots. It has the full array of emotion. I mean, you have a little bit of everything. You've got happiness, anger, frustration. There's a lot of relatable topics that they talk about that would fit right in the demographic for the average listener for this album. So yeah, it's definitely a very important album in a lot of ways.
And one of the things about it was, I mean, it came in a tumultuous time for the band. Let's go through real quick. This was released in June of 1999. It reached number 9 in the Billboard charts and number 15 in the UK album charts, their first chart in the UK. Sold 15 million copies worldwide, which for the type of band and the top at the time, that's a huge number. I mean, you had Green Day and The Offspring who were kind of leading that charge, but everybody else was kind of, tailing behind it, so to speak.
Yeah, a lot of the movement that was happening in the genre was primarily underground. You had a few acts that were, as you mentioned, like Green Day and Bad Religion, a few other ones, but this one definitely redefined the genre.
It was produced by Jerry Finn. Now, for those of you who don't know, Jerry Finn produced Dookie by Green Day. And he also produced some albums by the Goo Goo Dolls as well. So he was very, very entrenched in that culture, so to speak, that underground sub-punk culture, I guess you could say. It was released on the MCA label, and it's in essence, it's just basically pop punk, for lack of a better term.
Oh, I mean, yeah, quintessentially 100% pop punk.
I mean, it's not true punk because it's highly polished, and lyrically it's very, very connectable, and it's not really anti-establishment, so to speak.
No. I mean, that would be more like your Dead Kennedys, the Dead Milkmen, that sort of thing.
But one of the things about this as well, it kind of, again, it was a tumultuous time for the band. Dude Ranch should have been a national hit. Not necessarily worldwide, but the album was definitely, people knew who these guys were going into this album, which is, again, was kind of weird at the time because, I mean, 1997 was a very, very odd year for music, and it seemed like, at least overseas, that the American music scene was changing from more... we went from more rock and pop acts to more R&B and rap acts. I mean, you had the rise of rap stars, and you had the rise of R&B, and then all of a sudden, boom, this little pop punk album comes in, and it allowed them to join the Warped Tour. Now, I don't know much about the Warped Tour. Do you know anything about the Warped Tour?
Yeah, I've been to 3 or 4 installments of it. Yeah, I mean, it's just there's a lot of mainstream acts, but also at this time, like in '97 when they joined, they had a strong support for burgeoning, up and coming bands, underground bands, and there's a lot of bands that have gotten some pretty awesome momentum from festivals like that.
And it was more like a lot of the music genres kind of parallel a movement, so to speak, which, in all music things. And it's safe to say that a lot of this stuff was paralleling like the skater movement that was, again, becoming more and more mainstream. You had the likes of Tony Hawk, becoming mainstream, or is it Tony Hawk's?
Tony Hawk.
There's two of them, and I'll get to that in a couple of weeks. But I mean, there were even skating stars becoming movie stars, like, say, Jason Lee, for example. I mean, he was one of the I don't know where he came from, but he was like a huge skating guy before he became a movie star.
Yeah, he was a professional skater. He actually became friends with Kevin Smith.
Yeah.
Got one of his first big breaks in Dogma. I think he'd done some acting before that. I just don't think it was anything that substantial. And to date, most people don't even know him as a skater. Most people know him as Jason Lee, the actor.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
It's really, really weird like that. I mean, out of all the things, I mean, I'm going to be talking about next season how musicians became movie stars, but he'd be considered, I guess, a celebrity an actor athlete in the same way like O.J. Simpson was, or obviously he didn't kill anyone. But the tumultuous time for Blink-182 was based around their drummer at the time, Scott Rayner. He was having real bad alcohol problems. Just horrible alcohol problems. And on the Warped Tour, he was replaced by Travis Barker. And that kind of, what people don't realize is obviously Travis Barker, while he toured with them, he wasn't the actual drummer. He was the stand-in, And then after... And I think this is really bad. This is very, very backstabbing, I guess you'd say, the best way to do it. They said, go to rehab or you're getting fired. And then they fired him when he was in rehab.
Well, I mean, I've listened faithfully to every Blink-182 album, including their first album, Dude Ranch.
Yeah.
And I can say without a shadow of a doubt that while Scott Rayner is a proficient drummer, Travis Barker is just on a whole nother level.
Oh yeah,
so I kind of don't blame them, because that was like finding a piece of gold like in the middle of a trash can or something. I mean, it was just totally can't let that go.
Yeah, and I mean, musically it made sense. I mean, I'll say right now, I will say on this podcast, Travis Barker is the greatest living drummer right now. I don't care what anybody says. You can give me a drumming name, and I will tell you why Travis Barker is better.
I think you could argue that for the genre. I think there's some other drummers alive that are just as good, but it's like
he had a multiple drumming style though. He wasn't just a rock drummer. I mean, he came from a ska group for a start.
Yeah, the Aquabats.
The Aquabats. I can remember the name.
Yeah, he was only with them for one album, and I can't remember the name of it, but The Fury of the Aquabats. That is a great album. If you get a chance to listen to it, definitely listen to it.
It's just, like I said, I think because of his range of musical styles, is why I would say that. I mean, Phil Collins, the musician, gets a lot of bad press. However, he's a fantastic drummer. I don't think anybody who's seen Phil Collins behind a drum kit can say that he's a bad drummer. But his problem is the music he makes is so dull, devoid of any emotion and produced to the nth degree. But at the same time, you put him behind a kit and he's really, really good. But he only knows how to play one style, and that's that rock, progressive rock, whereas Travis Barker would come in with rock, jazz, funk, hip-hop, so on and so forth.
And he's proven that self with side projects like The Transplants.
Yep.
He's done studio drumming. It's also interesting, too, his background as a drummer. He was a marching band drummer. And which is interesting to me because I actually had a friend who was in Drum Corps International, which is basically like a 18 to 21 handpicked best of the best drum and bugle corps. One of the most phenomenal drummers I've ever seen in my life. However, you put him on a drum kit guy's totally lost. So the fact that Travis could translate that into a drum kit is just phenomenal. I've seen a lot of people struggle with that.
And I mean, I've seen that too, not just with drum kits, but I mean, like a couple of years ago, I went to watch my daughter sing with an orchestra, and they had the dudes with the double bass, and they had an electric bass, a proper bass guitar, and the guy picked it up and started playing, and he looked like he was holding it a little bit too far out in front and looked like he didn't have a clue what he was doing. And I was like, why don't you just pick it with the double bass, dude? It'd be the similar sound.
Right.
But as I mentioned, Jerry Finn produced the album, produced Dookie with the Goo Goo Dolls. Talking of how good Travis Barker was, the urban legend is that all the drumming that you hear on this album took him 8 hours to complete in one session.
And that's an 11, 12-track album?
12-track album, and it took the rest of the album 3 to 4 months to be produced. He took 8 hours to do his bit. Yeah,
whenever you go into the studio, typically in major label situations like that, what they'll do is they'll have the whole band cut everything live, and then they'll basically just isolate the drum part, and then everyone else will go back in and add their parts to it. So yeah, they really caught the intensity of his playing, and like the guy just never makes a mistake. I mean, he's just absolutely flawless.
No, he doesn't. I mean, like I said, the fact that I'm praising his drumming style right now, I mean, his drumming style influenced the overall sound of the band. I mean, like, I'm not trying to take away from Mark Hoppus and Tom DeLonge and try and make this the Travis Barker album, but Blink-182 were standard 4/4, 120, 140 beats per minute band straight away through, and then when Travis Barker came, he would drum the verse this style, and then change tom signature and drumming signature for the bridge and the chorus and so on, and kind of influenced the future sound of the band.
And he had really, really tasteful fills.
Yes.
Very musical playing. Doesn't overplay, but at the same time, lets his chops breathe a little bit. Yeah, man, he's fantastic.
The sound of the album, not necessarily the album, but the sound of the album was inspired by NoFX album Punk in Drublic. Yes. Now, I've never listened to that album. I'm presuming you have, and it's an assumption, but
yeah, no, that's a big part of the 90s punk scene right there, big time.
And see, again, NoFX was only in the underground skating guys who I went to college with. It was really, really weird too, because I learned a lot about the things, but a lot about certain bands, and I never actually listened to much of the songs, but they were always there. Finn is credited making the band take more takes because they wanted a polished sound. He basically said that wasn't good enough, try again. That wasn't good enough, try again. That wasn't good enough, try again. And that's why it took 4 months to do the bass and the guitars on top of everything. But I think you can't hear any mistakes, and it's very, very tight because of that. There's
a lot of production values on it. If you listen to it really carefully, there's a lot of vocal overdubs,
yes.
Guitar overdubs, and they've got some extra instruments in there as well that we'll get to here in a minute.
Yep.
So,
I mean, this album is a 4-person album with a producer. Which, again, even with established bands, just having 4 guys or 4 gals record an album seems a little weird. But no, it's just Mark Hoppus, who is bass guitar, vocals, Tom DeLonge on guitar and vocals, Travis Barker on drums and anything that could make a noise to be percussion, and Roger Manning Jr. I don't know who that guy is, but he plays piano parts, I think predominantly in Adam's song. I think that's the one with a lot of piano into it. And obviously produced by Jerry Finn. So I mean, so far before we've looked at any of the songs, it's got like a real heavyweight feel to it. It's like they weren't playing. They realized that Dude Ranch was the foundation of something. They needed to jump off and kind of, again, 4 months, 8 hours of drumming, and tight for the type of album that it was. That was. So let's look at this stuff track by track. I mean, I think there's about 14 tracks on the album, 13 or 14. I want to start with Dumpweed. And right away you can tell there's a difference in the style of music that they're going to do. That real hard drum beat, and then it just punches guitar and bass in there. It was written by Tom DeLonge, and it's basically a song about sexual frustration. And how, in his young mind at the time, he felt that he couldn't get any girls. And what I mean by that is the song is a callous complaint about girls not doing exactly what you wish they would. So basically, he's moaning about the friend zone.
Right.
From a long time ago. The hook of the song is a lyric that says, I need a girl that I can train. And just repeated and repeated. And digging into it, it's got a very, very weird meaning behind it. He's basically saying that girls are so much smarter than guys, and they can see the future as well as forget the past. So that basically leaves dogs as the only thing that men are smarter than. So what he's looking for basically is a woman with the intelligence of a dog who'll do as she's told.
That's interesting. I mean, but that's sort of a overriding theme throughout the album in a lot of ways. I mean, a lot of these songs are about relationships, breakups, sexual frustration.
A lot of them, it seems like they're aimed more towards late teenage males as well.
Yeah.
I mean, because, again, you and I were, late teens when we started, mid to late teens when this album came out?
Yeah, I was about 16.
Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of people took to it because of these kind of themes. And one of the things as well, he's not being, which we'll get to when we get to the end discussion, a lot of these things are not supposed to be taken seriously. So him saying, I need a girl that I can train, and she should do what she's told, he's not being serious when he's saying that, but he's making the point of how people think when it comes to that. It's like nowadays, hey, I took you to the movies, you must now have sex with me, And this is, I guess, the anthem of the friend zone.
Yeah.
We then leave to Don't Leave Me, which is written by Mark Hoppus, and it's a breakup song, basically. It's the end of a relationship, but looking at it in kind of an ironic way. And you'll find a lot of that in Mark Hoppus's songs, is that a lot of his songs talk about breakup and loneliness, whereas Tom DeLonge's songs talk about
trying to get
laid and being high.
Yeah.
But sweeping guitars in this song, an essence of you don't get in traditional punk is the overproduction on the guitars that kind of do that middle to end of the song. It just comes through really, 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 really well. Aliens Exist. Talk about a song to smoke weed to.
Yeah, I love the opening drum part of that too.
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember if it was Dump Weed or Aliens Exist, but I used to go to college with this guy. He was a really good drummer, and he used to warm up for like 20 minutes a day trying to master that. That tells you anything how great Barker is again.
It's getting people to believe it. Songs about UFOs and conspiracy theories.
Yeah, and Tom DeLonge is actually doing that sort of thing full time now. He's
conspiracy nut.
Yeah, he sort of fancies it. I don't want to give away stuff in the future. Like, I haven't looked all the way through the notes, but DeLonge's obsession with aliens and stuff affects his tenure in the band later on.
Yeah, and that's one of the sad things that I've noticed. I mean, conspiracies are good and everything like that, but to dedicate your life to them just seems a little. Well,
I mean, if you're a rich musician and you got
can get away with
money
anything
to burn, I mean, the guy's a multimillionaire, so.
Oh yeah, definitely. And this album probably was the one that made him the most money.
He's still making money off this album today.
Considering the rest of the album, could that be considered throwaway? It's a good song, but I mean, it's just like, to me, it seems like it fills up Tom between Don't Leave Me and Going Away to College.
I don't agree with that, man. Honestly, to me, this is one of those albums that listens like a book reads. I really feel like each track adds its own piece of the puzzle. So, I particularly enjoy every track on this album, but that's definitely one of my favorites.
Sweet. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a good song. To me, it didn't feel as deep as much of the other stuff.
Yeah, you're probably right. I've definitely have a deeper fancy for some of the other ones, like Going Away to College.
Yes.
I've got a lot of stuff personally connected to that. With that actually came out. This album came out the year that I moved to Louisiana from Arizona, and I had a very serious girlfriend at the time who I had to break up with because I was leaving the state, and we knew why we will both want to be 16, just getting our licenses and be in a long distance relationship. I mean, it didn't make sense. So I remember being at her house or hanging out with her, basically just crying in each other's arms, listening to the song over and over again. So, yeah.
And I like. I mean, I like Going Away to College as well. You know, it's again produced more than your average punk song. It was written ironically on Valentine's Day while watching Can't Hardly Wait. That's a heck of a movie to start writing love songs to. I mean, as you said, you know, it how much it sucks when people are in love in high school and are forced to be separate. I mean, you've testified to that.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't under the exact same circumstances, but I mean, it was very similar.
Yeah.
I mean, I was moving 3 states away from a woman that I fancied very, 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 very much. So it was hard.
One of the, I mean, you know, again, you hit the nail right on the head. This. I mean, this was written pre-internet days, so there was no text messages. It was basically letters and phone calls for something like, you know, for something like that.
Yeah.
And ironically, one of the 8 hours that Travis Barker took to record the album was going into this song. They had to recut it for some reason. But I mean, yeah, I love this. I think this is possibly my second favorite song on the album, and again because of the subject matter. Again, as we will get to the main point that I'm trying to make here, but again, it's on the surface it just seems childish and Blink-182-y, but then when you look into the song itself, it's a lot more, it's a lot deeper, basically.
Yeah, it is.
And you'll find that with every single track on this album, once you know the story behind it, it becomes a lot more deeper, even if it's simplistic in its lyrics and arrangement.
A bouquet of clumsy words.
Exactly.
It's one of my favorite lines from the whole album.
What's My Age Again? This is what started it. This is what started the roller coaster for them. Mark Hoppus wrote it. It was written as a joke called Peter Pan Syndrome, and it basically talks about being a 20-year-old acting like a teenager. And really, it is. You know,
and it's fairly accurate too. I was actually lucky enough to see Blink-182 in 1999, 98, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, those guys, they're at least the original lineup. Well, original lineup sans Rayner.
Yeah.
With Barker.
Classic lineup.
Yeah, they were absolute cut-ups. Mark and Tom have like a really unique stage chemistry. If you ever have a chance, they have a live album called The Mark, Tom, and Travis Show.
Yes.
It's highly explicit and it's very sexually suggestive, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's and not only that too, the musical portions of it are great. I mean, the in-betweens of the songs, you know, they have great chemistry, you know, blah, 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 blah. Like the country song, the hillbilly side, I think they start playing doom, 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 doom.
Yeah.
You know, and just the crowd gets into it, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're into another track, and it's high energy, and, you know, the crowd are loving it. The opening bass line sounds like something from the Pixies, from Debasa. That's what my notes say right here. I'm not sure. I'm not a big Pixies guy. I'll be completely honest.
Yeah, I'm not 100% familiar with that, but yeah, I mean, it had a very quintessential punk sound, and the Pixies definitely fall into that punk grunge sort of category.
Now, let me ask you a question as a musician. This song was written as a joke, childish, in some cases vulgar. Not in my case. I you know, it doesn't bother me. But the record label, I mean, as soon as the record label executives heard this, they had to excuse themselves with a napkin. You know, they just, wow, this is it. This is what we want to start with. Is that a good idea? Getting the suits involved with the artistic process in terms of getting something out the door.
You know, it's tough, man, because, you know, in some ways you don't want to be a sellout. You want to stay true to what you're doing. But I mean, you're recording an album with MCA, so there's going to be some
suitage involved.
Yeah, it's you know, at the end of the day, it's, you know, when you write your own material, especially when you spend a lot of time crafting it and getting it just exactly so. Just like any other form of art, whether you paint or sculpt, a lot of times if you look at it too long, you start to think of it differently.
Yeah.
So having an outsider's perspective, especially someone that's connected in the business, that understands the business, it can be quite valuable, actually. It gives a fresh pair of eyes on it, because I know, when I've written songs, I've overthought it and just absolutely chopped it to death and made it too campy, added all this extra stuff in it that didn't even need, so.
Kept fixing it until it was broke.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a certain balance to it to get it to where, you're staying true to Blink-182, but at the same time, you're putting out a product that's going to be relatable and appealing to a lot of people.
And see, that's one of my things too. A lot of the music I listened to came from more independent labels. So where the ethos was the artist is always right, and that's led to some great albums, and that's led to some albums where you look at it and go, I'll listen to it and go, oh, well, maybe a suit would have been good there. But especially for the genre of music, just trying to see how well the suits would blend into it. We go back to Tom DeLonge, and we go back to the Friend Zone and Dysentery Gary. Interestingly enough, Travis Barker, Latin style drums. That's I don't want to say a departure, but when you again, as we spoke about earlier, his multiple genre style of drumming kind of again helped this kind of track go through.
Yeah, he does a little like rim click sort of groove. Yeah.
More funky than rocky, so to speak.
Yeah, it's like the pre-chorus, I think it is.
I think so too. Again, I originally last listened to this album when I was first putting this podcast together, back in, was it March, April?
I don't remember. It was a while ago.
It was a while ago. So,
yeah, it's a while.
So every time I'm going to do this, and then I forget to do it. So again, it's friend zoney. Now, look, there are people out there who say the friend zone exists. There are people out there who say the friend zone doesn't exist. There are two kinds of friend zones. There's the one where the guy says, "Hey, how are you? Let me impregnate you," which is what most people think it is. And then there's the one where, the guy develops feelings and they're not reciprocated. This was written about the first kind, which is, "Hey, I like you, please bear my seed." And basically a childish way of how folks deal with it. How you deal with rejection of a crush.
Well,
and
I mean, especially from the standpoint that they're writing all this stuff at. I mean, you're mid to late teens and early 20s is a very awkward time.
Oh, definitely.
Especially sexually, because you have all these new hormones that are racing through your body, and you don't really understand what they mean and how to
express them.
Well, and not only that, but to compartmentalize logic with the animal instinct.
Yes.
To me, that was the toughest thing for me, because, if I could go back in time, I probably would have done things a lot differently than I had back then. I don't regret any of it, but if I knew what I knew now, then things would be very, very different.
And that's what a lot of people say too. People act their most stupid between the ages of like 15 and 21.
There's a reason they call it sowing your wild oats.
Yep.
Get it all out of the way.
Get it all out the way.
So you can turn 30 and grab a desk job and just rot away. And
have a mortgage and kids and...
Yeah. But I still get to play in a band, so
there you go.
I get to cling to that part of my childhood.
I might start that next year, I don't know. But I gotta learn how to sing first. We move on to one of the big hits on the album, Adam's Song.
This one is This is a tough tune with all the implications surrounding it, and sort of the mood and the demeanor of it. Definitely.
I mean, it's a definite come down for the rest of the album.
It's kind of the ballad in a way.
It is not written about suicide. A lot of people assume that it's a pro-suicide song. It is not. It was actually written about loneliness. They just finished the Warped Tour, and they all went home. And Travis went to his girlfriend. Tom went to his girlfriend. And he was just basically sitting at the baggage carousel by himself. You know, it looked like a scene in one of the Monty Python movies where the woman gives birth to the baby, and like the room is full of people, and then as soon as she has the kid, everybody just leaves, and she's just there by herself going, "Hello, hello." That's kind of how he felt. It is a serious song. It is a mid to low tempo song compared to the rest of the album.
That drum part, though. I mean, I just like in the verses, that little run. Like Travis has this pattern that he plays like all over the kit. I'm just trying to imagine what that song would sound like if Rainer was still man, and he was just like, boot, tats, boot, boot, tats, boot, tats. It would not have the same feel at all. The drums are kind of ominous in a way that sort of give it that dark feel. I mean.
I've heard bands do something like that to get their drummer to play what they want to play. They'll drum machine it, and then the drummer will get offended and drum the drum machine bits. It's like, well, that's the only way we can lead you to there is to program it first.
Yeah.
Callbacks to "Come As You Are" by Nirvana. I took my time. I hurried up. The choice was mine. It was never enough. Callback to "Take Your Time, Hurry Up, Choice Is Yours, Don't Be Late." I think it's the original lyrics. I might not be 100% correct, but I'm pulling off the top of my head.
I think actually the Blink-182 was "Took My Time, Hurried Up, Choice Was Mine. I didn't think enough." I'm pretty sure on that. But yeah, that was one of the first things that popped out to me. Being a huge Nirvana fan, huge Kurt Cobain fan. Yeah, it's definitely cool when you have other people that hear that and then don't know its significance, and then you tell them, like, "Oh, wow,
Come
really?"
As You Are. Listen to "Come As You Are." It'll cause a kickback. But the reason it's got a reputation as being a suicide song is not long after the album had been released, a 17-year-old teenager who attended Columbine High School and had lost his friends in the massacre hung himself. And he played the song, like, you put the CD in, hit repeat, and then tragically took his own life. And a lot of people thought, well, it's because he was encouraged by the song. He was encouraged by the song. He was encouraged by the song. No, again, as we've pointed out, it's about loneliness, not suicide. I mean, I can understand people would take it like that when you listen to some of the lyrics. But both members of the band, Mark Harper said, "I was actually out shopping, and management called me and told me the story of what happened." And I was like, but it's an anti-suicide song. It felt awful. I mean, these things that the kid had to go through his life were very saddening. And then to end it the way it was really depressing. But Adam's song, the heart of the song, is about having hard times in your life, being depressed, and going through a difficult period, but then finding the strength to go on and finding a better place at the other side of that. And I agree with that statement completely. I mean, the song it's very down, but the chorus is, at least the arrangement of the chorus is very, very uplifting. Maybe the lyrics might not be, but definitely the arrangement.
Yeah, I think the one specific lyric that could point to it possibly being about suicide, or how someone could misconstrue it as that, is "You'll be sorry when I'm gone."
Yes.
To me, that was, or "You'll never step foot in my room again. You'll close it off and board it up."
And I think that was more, I mean, even though it was released a little bit later, that was, I think it's the pre-shadow to, well, fine, I'll build my own lunar lander with blackjack and hookers.
Right.
That's what, you be sorry when I'm gone, because I'll have my own way of doing it.
I'll show you. Yeah.
And it could have been taken like that. Tom DeLonge said, "It affected us really strongly because that song was a song of hope. When we were writing it, we knew specifically that we did not want kids to think it was something that we thought was cool or rad. We didn't endorse it in any kind of way," talking about suicide.
And, I got to tell you, it's kind of a point of contention for me when people blame recording artists and musicians and stuff for other people's actions.
Definitely.
Unless the song is called "Go Kill Yourself, You Loser," and that's the whole song being played over and over again, even then, no one's made them do that. So,
no. I mean, I think it was the same thing with the Nirvana track, "I Hate Myself and I Want to Die," It just people assumed, as I mentioned in the Britpop episode, people assumed that it was a depression thing or a suicide thing when it was actually a play on words from their recording process.
Yeah, I don't. Did we talk about this already?
We didn't talk about it, but I know I mentioned it briefly in the Britpop episode.
Yeah, they were. It's when they were recording the In Utero album. there was some frustration because they actually ended up switching producers halfway through, or engineers halfway through. It was one or the other. And he kept making them redo everything. And so there was this inside joke between the band saying, "Hey, how you doing today?" "Oh, I hate myself and want to die." So it was more like an inside joke. But with Cobain's supposed suicide, possible murder, depending on what side of the fence you're on, it takes a whole different connotation. Anyways, done chasing that rabbit.
But we go to something a little bit happier now. I don't want this to be all doom and gloom. Again, it is a happy album except for this one, and even then, it's not a sad song. It's just it's a introspective song, at least. You definitely think about it. We go to All the Small Things, which was the worldwide hit.
Yeah, that's the biggest hit off the album, and one of the most popular songs that we play in the holodecks by far.
Oh, definitely. It's also one of the biggest songs of the 90s. I mean, it just took the world by storm. This song is what I was introduced to Blink-182 by.
Yeah, it's sing along mecca.
It was specifically written to be a pop single. It was written to be a single, and it was definitely written to be the most poppy thing that they could possibly have done in terms of what they wanted to do. Homage to the Ramones in this song, which I find funny because the Ramones were the most anti-suit band that they portrayed themselves to be, and yet here we are doing a suit album. Na 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 na.
In 3-part harmony at that.
Yeah, I mean that's very, very simple song too. That's one thing I like about
C, G, and F, and then C, F, and G.
Yeah, just 3-chord rock.
It works though.
Wait till they discover a minor chord.
And once again, that song would have sounded very bland and uneventful if it weren't for Travis Barker. His drumming just put it right over the top.
He made a lot of this album. He did. Again, it's not necessarily the Travis show, but he deserves a lot more credit than people realize.
Yeah, he's definitely driving the bus in the band.
But while the lyrics of this song sounded like nonsensical words to rhyme and everything like that, there is some autobiographical. Tom DeLonge's girlfriend, for example, bought him a stack of roses and left them next to his staircase in the new house that they just bought. Hence the phrase, "She left me roses by the stairs, surprised to let me know she cares." That sounds throwaway when you just listen to it without hearing the backstory. But now you hear the backstory, it ticks on, it's like, oh, so sweet. Talking about UFOs and oh look, she left me roses. The next track, and the reason I'm not going too deep into All the Small Things, because we all know that song. We've heard it so many times before, and it's not really much depth to it, other than it was written as a pop song, and it had some Ramones influence to it.
And the music video was absolutely hilarious.
Oh, definitely.
Love that music video. They're kind of a jab at the boy bands.
Yes, jab at everything. I think that inspired a lot of the bands that came afterwards music videos too, like Bowling for Soup, The Girl All the Bad Guys Want, where they just ripped apart every music video that was done by any new metal / depressed rock band ever. I think the main target was Outside by, was it Stained? The bald dude who hung around with Fred Durst. That's the only thing I remember.
Oh yeah, Aaron Lewis. Yeah.
I almost said Aaron Stevens.
who's a country artist now.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm on the outside. Okay. We moved to the party song, which was written by Mark Hoppus after leaving what he described as a jock-infested party at San Diego University. With students thinking so much of themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Now, full disclosure, I was part of I played football, and I listened to music, so I wasn't part of any of these like jock-infested nerd parties that were thrown at my school. And the guys actually I was in the band with, they told me that they at school, they did all that stuff, which now I wish I went to that school instead. Some part of me did. But it's a description of every high school party. I mean, that's easily fair to say. If you are unfamiliar with what a high school party looks like, pull up any American teen movie and watch the high school party scenes, and then divide it by about 20. Because really not that many people show up to them.
Yeah, nobody dances at parties either.
No, they just sit there with their drink in one hand, trying to figure out how to diminish the force field of the friend zone.
Right.
But this actually did have a statement made to it. it was trying to say that jocks are these loudmouth, boorish, sexually driven idiots, but it was also made the statement that, you know what, the girls are as well.
It's that age, man.
It's the age.
Yeah.
My daughter's that age. Oh God. But I mean, it was, again, it was a social statement, but nobody kind of picked up on it because they just thought it was childish stuff. I mean, you know, that's the only way to describe it. But again, a really good song. One of the standout tracks of the album. Definitely. It after Adam's song, it picked up the pace nicely. Where you had the down, then you had the pop song, and then back up to, as the drumming style. My favorite song on the album is next, Mutt. Written by Tom DeLonge. In my opinion, this is the soundtrack song because it was on like 3 or 4 different movies.
I'm trying to remember. For some reason, that one's not ringing a bell. Is that Life Just Sucks?
No.
I lost on. Okay.
She's Up and Waiting for More.
No, he's okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
It was on the American Pie soundtrack with the webcam scene.
Mm.
And in fact, that's why they made a cameo in the movie too.
Right, during that exact time.
Yeah. I love this song. I think the drum beat at the very beginning, again, showed Travis Barker's,
prowess.
Yes. And it was more, I wouldn't say bass heavy, but it was guitar light in certain areas.
Yeah, the guitar drops out, and it's basically just bass and drums for the verses, which does a lot for the dynamics of the song when it picks back up in the chorus.
And then, I don't want to say it's a drum solo, but the musical break is definitely drum heavy, as opposed to any. Again, that's I've never heard that in a band before, of the musical break being drum heavy with a little bit of guitar and bass, as opposed to being a guitar solo or just a big musical interlude, or even
Right.
Yeah. Now, ironically, this is one of the few songs that was recorded with Scott Raynor on the drums. Originally, there's a movie called The Show that has an early version of this song with Scott Raynor behind the drum kit. So if I've never heard it, but I'm interested to listen to it because, again, Scott Raynor was not a bad drummer, but he certainly was not as good as Travis Barker was.
And you know what's interesting? You mentioned Green Day earlier. Both Green Day and Blink-182 were propelled by getting a phenomenal replacement drummer.
Yes.
Because if you listen to Green Day's first 2 albums, they had, I can't remember his last name, is John D. I think it was like Duppenmeyer or something like that. He did a fantastic job, but once again, Trey Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Trey Cool might be Travis Barker's only competition in that genre.
I'd say that.
He might be. I mean, they both have similar backgrounds, similar taste in music.
Well, that leads to the question. A lot of bands, have replaced their drummer and have gone on to, after they've replaced them. So the key is, kids, if you're in a band and you're doing okay, sack your drummer for a better one, and then you're good to... No, I'm just kidding.
If you're putting together a band, I'll tell you this from first-hand experience. If you're putting together a band, you're only as good as your drummer and your bassist.
Yes.
I cannot stress that enough. You get a good drummer, you're set.
Definitely. I mean, look at Nirvana.
Another band propelled by
Drummer change.
Yeah, they actually had 8 different drummers.
Wow.
Before they settled on Dave Grohl.
That's a heck of a settle, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
their original drummer was this guy Chad Channing. They had Dale Crover from the Melvins, Aaron Burkhart from I can't remember who, but they've had around 5 to 8 different drummers, something like that.
only one band I know that's worked in the inverse, and that's the Who.
Yeah.
But then again, you replace Keith Moon with anybody, it's going to be a very, very difficult replacement.
Oh yeah, that band was over as soon as he died.
Oh yeah, but Zach Starkey's come in and he does really, really well.
Sure.
I mean, Ringo Starr's son got trained by Uncle Keith. So, and the good thing about Zach Starkey is he can do traditional and the wild Keith Moon style. So we have 2 more tracks to go. One of them is called Wendy Clear. The song is named after a boat called Wendy and the word clear. So this is Wendy Clear. I mean, that's...
Huh.
It's about having a crush on someone that you're not supposed to have. So I don't know if it means you have a crush on somebody forbidden, or you have a crush on somebody that people would absolutely...
Or that's out of your league.
That's out of your league, or even you think is out of your league. The drums and the bass in this song, the composition of this song, the drums in between the second and third verse has a kind of deliberate sound to make the chorus seem bigger than what it was. Good song, again, kind of like The Aliens Exist, not very deep, and again, throwaway is probably not the correct word, but it's the closest word I can think of. Filler, yes.
Yeah.
Just kind of, we need a track for track 11. Well, here's one we wrote earlier. Oh, okay. Well, here we go. And then finally, we have Anthem, which was written by Tom DeLonge. It's talking about leaving the suburbs and feeling trapped at the age of 21. And speaking as a guy who's never lived in the suburbs, I don't get it. For me, where you live is where you live. Your home is your house is your house. Your home is your home. Whatever. Doesn't matter where it is. But it's also based on what happened when he was at a party, and he was playing at a party, and it was raided by the cops. And it's the perfect sum up of the whole album. It kind of encompasses everything that they've spoken about. It wraps everything up in a neat little bow, for lack of a better term. It features pretty much all of the themes that were talked about in the other tracks, and the styles of all the other tracks. It kind of like is a melting pot, but it was made in a way where it seems unique. And it's a good song. It's a loud song. I mean, it's called Anthem, obviously, and it was written about a party. But it's a good song, and it deserves its place on the album, at least, anyway.
This album would have sucked without Travis Barker. Can
Definitely.
I just say that? Maybe it wouldn't have sucked, but it would not have been the same album without Travis Barker.
Not even close. Not even close. Again, Travis Barker is one of a kind.
Absolutely.
In terms of his drumming style. And that's part of the legacy, too. I mean, Travis Barker just announced to the world, here I am, and bang, I'm here, and you can't get me away. And he proved that in many, many different styles, and so on and so forth. Jerry Finn went on to actually become Blink-182's producer, and produced a couple more albums by them and a whole host of others from the genre. He was kind of like the go-to guy for the pop punk.
For a slick pop punk sounding album, yeah.
Before his untimely death in 2008. This album did kick off the pop punk explosion that started, again, like I mentioned with Britpop a couple of weeks ago, it had already started, but this was like the match that lit everything up.
Cemented it, basically.
Yeah. I mean, then you had the stuff like The Offspring had already started this, and Green Day had already started this, but Blink-182 kind of was the dead.
They ushered in a lot of other bands that may have not have gotten the same attention because of their success.
Sum 41.
Yeah.
Good show. Newfound Glory, Jimmy Eat World, so on and so forth. Good Charlotte, man, I'm sorry. Somebody introduced me to Good Charlotte, and I've never wanted to hate somebody more in my life.
Yeah, actually, what's interesting about them, I don't know if we have any A Perfect Circle fans listening right now, but Josh Freese, who was Perfect Circle's original drummer, did all the drum tracks for Good Charlotte's debut album.
Wow.
Yeah, I heard that he doesn't like to talk about that now.
To be fair, I wouldn't either.
But hey, if you're a studio drummer, that's how you make your money, playing drums. So, I mean, when I've been plucked for studio work or live work, I mean, if they're paying me, it can be country, blues. I mean, it's what I do. I play bass. So
this album also inspired the revival of Green Day. Because in 2001, Green Day were a mess. That Warning album.
Yeah.
Is that called Warning or Waiting? I can't remember which
no, it's Warning.
It was Warning. It was such a...
It was so trite. It was like it had already been done.
They were just playing to play, and then they went away and wrote American Idiot.
Well, it's like there was Dookie, and then there was Dookie Part 2, and then there was Dookie Part 3, and then Dookie Part 4.
And it was samey. It was exactly the same. And then bang, American Idiot came out a couple of years later. And they credit this album for kind of keeping them together and saying, look, we can have deep meanings in our songs and still have fun.
And they kind of started taking stances at that point. Because before it was just like, oh, I'm neurotic and I'm stoned and blah blah blah.
And that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but now it's like, they have these like really specific political stance and all these other things,
It matured.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're like 50 years old now. I hope it matured them.
Well, then again, Johnny Rotten hasn't matured, so
Yeah.
you know. In my opinion, this is now people who know me know that this isn't my cup of tea musically, so to speak. It's not my traditional cup of tea musically, but I know a good sounding album, and I know a good album when I hear one, and I think this is a solid 7 out of 10. Nothing too controversial in terms of the type of music that they were trying to make, but definitely a solid album, definitely a good album.
Oh, great album. Yeah, it was the anthem of basically my late teens.
And that's what I've got here. It was a teenage young adult Bible,
Like perspective and sort of guidebook. And yeah, I mean, and I guess you could say I was among the target demographic at that age, about 16, 17.
Yeah, it's like we know what you're going through. This is what you're going through. Isn't it?
16 just had such better days.
Yep. But it can be childish. It can be spiteful, but equally as thoughtful.
Yeah.
I mean, there's parts in there where it's making commentary, social commentary, and at the same time, it's doing it with, for lack of a better term, a bunch of dick and fart jokes,
Right.
But and that's the point I was trying to make earlier. The album itself, in terms of themes and messages, is very, very introspective, very, very thoughtful, very, very makes you think, with the guise of being just another throwaway, vulgar, childish.
It's not that just for the sake of being that.
Yes.
It's doing that to. It's like hills and valleys.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I mean, it's definitely, you could, at its surface, you could write it off for being, just a bunch of immature 20-something-year-olds writing about dick and fart jokes. You could make that argument, but I think it's deeper than that, because what you have is the experience of someone who's been through that, looking back on that sort of thing and commenting on it. I mean, that sort of thing is valuable to people of that age who are going through those same things, because you don't know how to approach this stuff and what you're going to feel. And, to have someone that's been through it that can kind of eloquently weave it into a relatable sort of thing that's huge.
And people our age and older, we think of teenagers being wet behind the ears, and they don't know what they're doing, they don't know what they're talking. But then again, they still have the real emotions, and in fact, at that age, they're more intense than emotions that we get as mid to late 30s.
I would say I'm 35, and I still feel like I don't know what I'm doing. So that never changes. So I think the best thing that, if we have any younger listeners that are listening right now, the best thing we can learn from that is just to enjoy where you're at.
Yep.
Enjoy life. It's going to present new challenges every day. There's going to be times when you're sublimely happy, when you're going to be very sad, and you just have to take it with a grain of salt and just learn from your mistakes and just try to be a better person every day. That's all you can do.
Travis Barker's debut recording as himself, and changed the sound overall, and showed, and again, as I mentioned earlier, I think he's the best active living drummer right now.
You could make that argument. It's hard to quantify styles, but tick for tick, like if you put Travis Barker up against, say, like Mike Mangini, Akira Himbo, Max Weinberg, I could probably name about 10 other drummers. But the point being, if you sat him down like with some sticks and just a snare drum, there would definitely be a dogfight.
He's at least in the high stages of the conversation, at least.
Yeah, I think it comes down to preference at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But he is referred to as one of the cleanest drummers, and if you're not familiar with that term, it basically just means how well you articulate each note.
Yeah.
And the spacing between each note, because that's the thing. The drumming it's about the notes you hit, but it's equally about the notes you don't hit.
Even though it sounds like really, really 90s, and we know it's really, really 90s, it kind of dates itself with some of the references it makes.
Absolutely.
Like, I Wrote You Letters. Sadly, that's one of the lost arts, especially in long-distance relationships.
Yep.
It's now, I'll send you a text message.
Or let's FaceTime later, or
look, I sent you a snap of me looking like a puppy.
Yeah.
God, Bennett, man. You do realize some teenager's going to go missing, And that's going to be horrible. Some teenagers are going to go missing, and the picture that they use on the news or the milk carton to describe
They're gonna have the huge eyes and
the dog ears,
and all kind of little.
Oh my word! It argues that while female teenagers are generally smarter and more mature than their male counterparts,
That's by design, but yeah.
Yep. They're just as nasty as the guys.
Absolutely, in every way.
Yep. That's equality for you folks.
So that's nature versus nurture, but I mean, women mature faster than men, so.
And they know it too.
But they're still teenagers, so.
Still wet behind the ears a little bit.
There you go.
The production value of Jerry Finn made the album sound kind of sterile and clean, but that was the point. I think it was produced perfectly.
It was a little sterile, and that might have. I don't know if that's production style or his console of choice, but it did have some warmth to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't too sterile. I would actually say of Finn's albums, Dookie is probably the most sterile album I've heard him do. But it's still a great album. It's one of my top 10 favorites of all time.
It's a little too clean. It's clean, but it's a little too clean.
Almost, yeah. Especially if you go back and listen to Kerplunk or 1039 Smooth Out Slappy Hours. Yeah, totally different sound.
And as I've mentioned at the beginning of the show, this is probably the most 90s album out there in the whole thing of 90s albums, because most people
could argue that, yeah.
Most people think of the 90s, they very rarely talk about the early 90s. They're usually talking about between 95 to 99. You know, and now with this, obviously I've touched on things before that, and you know, we will in future, but I mean, this is definitely the most, you know, if you looked up 90s album in the dictionary, here's Blink-182 with the porn star on the cover of the album.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that.
No, we didn't. But she actually dressed up back in the uniform for a photo shoot a couple of months ago with a couple of the guys.
It's been what, like almost 20 years?
Almost 20 years.
Jeez.
Yeah. That's the weird part about it. This album was released 20 years ago, nearly.
You know, actually, I saw Blink-182 back in 98, 99 with the classic lineup. And I actually saw them last year when they played in Dallas with their new guitar player. And man, them old dudes still put on one hell of a show. I mean, and the other great thing, their new guitar players from Alkaline Trio, Matt Skiba. I wasn't so sure about him, but after listening to California and seeing them live, great guy. At one point of the show, Travis Barker and Matt Skiba switched places.
Really?
Yeah, Matt Skiba went and played the drums. They all switched.
Okay.
Travis Barker played bass. Mark went to guitar, and then Skiba went to drums. And they played like 2 or 3 songs like that. It was just so funny though, because Travis was up there. It was like he was doing it, but like the way he was holding the bass, he was just like, what is this thing? Like, how do I...
The first time I saw Dave Grohl play, because I knew of Nirvana, but I didn't know what any of them looked like.
Right.
And I knew of the Foo Fighters, and I saw Dave Grohl, so like I'm seeing him play guitar, and then I see him behind the drum kit, and I'm like, whoa, that looks... And then it was the first time I saw Phil Collins behind the drum kit that looked weird too,
yeah.
You know. It is weird watching guys you establish mentally with one instrument play another instrument.
Yeah, like in the Unplugged, I know we're going on a tangent here, but the Unplugged Nirvana, Chris Novoselic breaks out an accordion.
Yes.
Also, Kurt Cobain started off as a drummer.
I did not know that.
Just think about how different the musical landscape would have been if Kurt Cobain had never played guitar.
Kurt Cobain leaves Nirvana under an apparent suicide, and then rocks up on the second Foo Fighters album, because Taylor does have a little Kurt look to him.
He kind of does, but I mean, he's basically Dave Grohl Part 2.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, his drumming is so derived from Dave. Also, an interesting fact about him, he actually played on Alanis Morissette's debut album.
Really?
Taylor Hawkins, yes. It was him, Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction. That was her rhythm section for that album.
Jane's Addiction or Red Hot Chili Peppers?
Well, at the time he was in Jane's Addictions. I think he was transitioning into the Peppers, but yeah, you get my point.
I don't think he was a good seat for the Peppers myself, Dave Navarro.
Yeah, I mean, for one hot minute, I think he worked really well. But if you look at everything past that, I mean, I don't know what happened. I know Frusciante, the original guitar player, had problems with drugs and stuff like that. But those first couple albums with him on guitar, man, gold.
The problem is, though, if you combined all of Nirvana's former drummers and all of the Red Hot Chili Peppers' former guitarists, there's like 8 million different combinations you can have between them.
Yep.
Greg, man, it's been awesome having you on. The invitation again is always open. We've got some good stuff coming up next season because we're obviously nearing the end of this season. But social media question for this week. It is about our featured album, Enema of the State. Was it a childish album, or did it have some substance to it? I think it had a lot of substance to it myself.
Yes.
And so
my answer is yes.
Answer is yes. Let us know on social media websites. I'll post this here in a little bit. And again, it's really great to have you on. And
thanks for having me.
Not
Appreciate
a problem.
It.
Nirvana were the biggest band in the world in 1993.
MTV was the biggest music network in the world.
And their Unplugged series was one of the flagship shows.
Rock acts playing hard rock songs on acoustic instruments.
The fit was natural.
Then the argument started.
MTV executives wanted a greatest hits type of set.
And guests with high name value like Eddie Vedder.
Nirvana wanted a more intimate set, playing few hits.
And guests like the Meat Puppets.
Nirvana won the day.
The band played a phenomenal 14-track set.
Hitting highs with a Bowie cover.
A moment with Kurt Cobain all by himself.
An accordion.
And a sigh. During the final song, Where Did You Sleep Last Night?
Kurt sighed.
The camera caught the moment.
With Kurt's untimely death several months later, that sigh took on a different meaning.
Some say that it was the moment we subconsciously knew
that Kurt was close to the end of the line.
The show is now considered a masterpiece.
A template to what an Unplugged show could do.
And a fitting end
to a great band.
Sincerest thank yous to Gregg Gregory for helping me out this season, and that's the last time I'm going to hear from Greg for a little while, but I want to thank him profusely. I couldn't have done a lot of these episodes without him. He has been very, very helpful and very, very instrumental in getting us up and running and getting us going. As I mentioned the beginning of the season and in the episode itself, Greg is a member of the Holodecks. You can check them out at theholodecks.com. That's HOLLOW for hollow. So theholodecks.com. Or check them out on Facebook at the Holodecks. Again, if you guys are a fan of 90s music, these guys are absolutely brilliant. They recently won Architects Music Award Rock Band of the Year in 2017. And yeah, I mean, these guys are really, really good, and good guys too. Good guys. So that's almost it for this week. Again, I'm going to repeat the social media question for you. Was Enema of the State a childish album, or did it have some subtle meaning behind it? I personally think it had a lot of subtle meaning, but yeah, it was childish. It was childish in its presentation. But, I'm going to post this on social media sites on Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr. Go ahead and cast your vote. Let us know. Give us your opinion on it. If anything that you have an opinion on the show, I mean, again, reach out to us, social media sites. I will read and reply everything that is put on social media, because I don't have a show without you guys. So that's just how it is. Next week's show is our final episode of the year. This is our season finale. It's kind of a bittersweet moment, I guess. But again, like I mentioned earlier, we've got so much coming up with the holidays. It just gives me time to relax and, restock the shelves and so on and so forth. We are going to be gone for a couple of weeks, but we do have some content that's coming up in the break that we've already pre-recorded, is already in the can, and so on and so forth. So, we won't be completely dormant. And plus, we'll still be on social media sites and so on and so forth. But next week, we will be reviewing Pulp Fiction, perhaps the greatest movie ever made. I'm sorry for anybody who talks about The Godfather. I think Pulp Fiction is fantastic. We're going to go in and look at everything behind it, the stories behind it, the acting behind it, the direction behind it, just everything you can think of in a good movie review, plus the fact that, it's Tarantino's masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. I know recently Tarantino's come under a little bit of criticism from how he handled certain things in the sex scandal that's going around, but that's a hard thing to reconcile, I think. But at the same time, this movie is fantastic. It's, Tarantino's actions, whatever they are or aren't, should not take away from the fact that Samuel L. Jackson, John Travolta, Bruce Willis, Uma Thurman, and everybody else had such phenomenal performances. You can't take that away from them. I'll go into a debate about that at another time. But I will be joined by Molly Watson. Molly is an avid fiction fan. She loves books. She loves movies. She's bright. She's bubbly. She's awesome. I think, you guys are going to like her. We're going to go ahead and get this discussion going on. And again, like I mentioned, Greg, Sarah, and Molly is one of the people who helped me basically get this up and running, and I wouldn't be where I am right now with this podcast without the help of those three. So that's it for this week, guys. If you like what you hear, give us a like on social media, give us a like on Podbean and iTunes, give us a review too. We are looking to grow our audience, and I will see you guys next week.